Ms. Frankel for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Poe. Again, I want to just, to Mr. and Mrs. Andrews, my heart breaks for you. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that you have to be here. And I want to try not to politicize this, really for your benefit. To the other gentlemen, really thank you again for your service. I cannot tell you how much, as a mother I don't want to keep hoisting my son up, but I understand your bravery, your selflessness. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. My first question is to Dr. Jacobson, and if the others want to answer, fine. What can we learn from Mr. Sergeant Bergdahl? I know we're bringing him back. We've been talking in all types of disparaging ways about him. We don't know that much about him, at least I don't. But what can we learn from his capture? Can he give us valuable information?
Absolutely, Congresswoman Frankel. As I know Representative Kinzinger knows from his time going through SEER training, a lot of what we understand now about captivity, a lot of what we can do to help inoculate our personnel against those stresses comes from, unfortunately, the experience of individuals who are held captive, not just during our wars, but during peacetime detention. So as we have heard from the military, there is going to be a debriefing process, and in that, one can hope that there is information that one day might save the life or make it less problematic for future U.S. personnel who are held in captivity in the inevitable conflicts in the future.
I believe, without debating the merits of how long we stayed in Afghanistan, I do believe that we were there because our own freedoms were jeopardized by al-Qaeda, and they were being protected by the Taliban. I want to talk about those freedoms and what sets us apart from the Taliban. Specifically, I know you would probably all agree, you go to fight for our freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and there's something else I would respectfully like to suggest, which is our due process of law that we have in this country, and what a high standard it is. And so my question to all of you is, should soldiers who misbehave be subject to due process of law?
Well, he's a member of the armed forces. He's not subject to a civilian or federal court. He's subject to ECMJ action. Should
he have a due process, even though it's a military court?
Yes, and that's the whole point that I'm coming forward and telling my side of the story. He deserted. He's back. Great, he's back, but he needs to face and be held accountable for his actions.
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
Congresswoman, there was a real fear, me included, in those first 24 hours that there would be, quote unquote, ticker tape parades and rose garden ceremonies, and that this whole effort would get politicized, and that the truth, frankly, would be buried. And that's why both myself, Specialist Full, and others have come forward.
Okay, so I think we agree, though, the due process of law, that he's entitled to that.
Absolutely.
And lastly, and I want to, anyone who wants to ask this question, and this I'm coming at as a mother, all right, which is, do you believe all our soldiers, all these men and women who go into battle or go into war are perfect? Do we bring in perfect people?
I hope my friend Mike will agree. It's when you've been in charge of junior troops, hardly a day probably goes by. It's almost like being a parent, where, for a parent, your kids are imperfect. I'm sure my mother would say the same thing. But that's why it's so important to have well-trained NCOs, to have good leaders in those positions, to guide these troops through something that's unbelievably stressful, and to ensure that they all get home alive.
Well, I do know this. I don't know very much about Mr. Bergdahl or his family or what he was going through, what his mind was going through. I hope that will be determined, as you have suggested. I think that's fair. I know this, that so many of our young men and women are coming home and they have been stressed out and are mentally unstable. And I would not like to think that they would not be subject to due process if they committed a crime. So with that, I want to thank you, all of you, for your service. Again, Mr. and Mrs. Andrews, really, I'm so sorry for your loss. And Mr. Chair, I waive the rest of my time.
The gentlelady yields back, and just so